Well, good morning, ladies. It is so good to see everyone here this morning. We have a really great morning planned. Our speaker is going to just be phenomenal, and I think you guys are going to want to have a lot of time to ask questions and everything, so we're going to try to keep announcements brief. I just want to pray to get us started this morning, if you'll join me. Dear Lord, thank you so much that we can gather and be together as moms this morning. I just want to pray that you would give us a time of peace and of rest. I know mornings can be crazy trying to get everyone here, and all of us are going through something. And I just pray that you would protect this time and just really allow us to hear what Hollis has to say today. And please just give us something we can take home and remember that will just help us to rest and take care of ourselves the best that we can. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Okay, just a few quick announcements. At your tables, you have some cards for teachers. So if you wouldn't mind, as a group, getting all of the cards at your table filled out, we're going to be handing those out to teachers in the area, just as a just as a thank you. They have a really tough job, especially in these times, and we just want to let them know that we appreciate them. So if you don't mind taking a few minutes to do that throughout the morning. And also, this table over here, this black table with the flowers, is our recipe exchange table. So if you brought your recipe cards, go ahead and before we start, make sure they get over here to the table. And then at the break, you will be excused to grab 5 cards. So if you brought 5 cards, you will get to take 5 cards. So we'll try to get those over there before we start. And
okay, before I introduce our speaker, Hollis, I did want to share a little bit of my journey of self-care, of like where I used to be to where I am now. And just to lay the scene, this is like after I had our first son. My husband and I are both shift workers, so as a nurse, I would work like 12 and a half hours. And then as a firefighter, my husband works 24 hours. So what we would do is Drew would take a turn working a day, and then I would be gone the next 2 days that he would have off for about 14 hours, and then he would go back to work for another 24 hours. So in about a 6-week stretch, because he only has every 3rd weekend off, and then I had a call weekend, in that 6 weeks, we'd have 1 weekend off together as a family in 6 weeks. So we were basically 2 ships passing in the night, and it was like, tag, you're it's your turn to be the parent. And then in addition to our family responsibilities and our careers, we were also watching our nieces 3 to 4 days a week. So we were strung out at like a physical, like we had nothing left physically and nothing left emotionally. And I wasn't thriving in Christ. I wasn't thriving as a mom. I wasn't thriving as a wife. And the interesting thing is we worked so hard to get out of debt before we had kids, because the whole point was that I could be home with our kids. And I would have said family is my most important thing, and yet they were getting the worst version of me. So I was in full survival mode, and I would say not only was my cup empty, it was so dry that it was cracking. So about 8 months in, full anxiety, and it led me to counseling. And as I sat down with this counselor, he was like trying to say like, well, what could you give up? Could you give up being in charge of your department? Could you give up watching your nieces? And then the lies come in of, but I'm in charge of my department, and that's really validating. And, oh, but I'm supposed to think of myself less and serve others. Like the lie of, yes, we want to put others above ourselves, but when I have nothing to give, I'm not giving well. And so one of the most significant things he said to me was, Janessa, when you say yes to something, you're also saying no to something else, and vice versa. When I say no to something, I'm saying yes to something else. And so that began a process for me and Drew and our family and how we make decisions. So now we have these weekly and daily business meetings of like what our days and our weeks require of us, and then what we need. Does he need to go for a run? Was he up all night and he needs to take a nap? Because yes, I've been alone for over 24 hours, but if he takes a nap, he's going to be more present with me and the kids. And if I take a walk after being alone for over 24 hours, that's when I put my earbuds in and I blast like worship music and I commune with the Lord. Like I get to brain dump, like, this is where I'm frustrated and this is where I'm surrendering and this is the place you've brought me to. So how do I do it well? And then I get to come back in my house renewed and cultivate a family and an environment that we can all thrive in. So with that, I want to introduce Hollis. Is she? There you are. Hi. This is Hollis Wenzel. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Oregon since 1996. So she's been a therapist for about 30 years. And her clinical experience includes working with clients in private practice, small clinic, and inpatient settings. Although Hollis has specialized in working with couples and families over the course of her career, recently she's been called to help the elderly and their families navigate life transitions that come with aging. Hollis has extensive expertise in helping clients who are dealing with marital satisfaction, blended family issues, marital infidelity, parenting, grief, and loss issues, anxiety, depression, and life transitions. And as a part of the River Ridge Counseling Office team, Hollis often partners with her husband, Dave. He has a PhD in providing marriage intensives, and they present workshops and seminars together. So she's one of my favorites. So I'm really excited she's here. Thanks, Hollis.
Thank you. All right. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen with you. Hold on. Here we go. And share. Okay, hold on just a second here. And all right, can you all see that? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. So first of all, thank you for the nice introduction. And Janessa, I could actually say, Janessa, given what she just shared, she could actually do this talk herself. I really love the things she was saying. The business meetings with your spouse, giving each other breaks, really everything that she ran through there. Some of that you're going to hear from me today. But yeah, those things. I loved putting your earplugs in, those kinds of things. So thank you, Janessa. So the name of, first of all, I have to give a nod to my husband, Dr. Dave Wenzel, who has given a talk at Good Shepherd for years called Why Women Need Chocolate. And I was cued that there's a line that needs to be drawn these days between self-care and self-indulgence. And so I changed the format of this a bit because I don't want there to be a confusion about that. Self-indulgence would be doing nothing but eating the chocolate, and self-care might include some eating of chocolate. So I just wanted to touch base on that. Okay, so I'm going to say that I'd like to dedicate this talk today to two of the most important women in my life. My mom is the one you see on the right in the red vest, and my mother-in-law is the woman on the left. So that's Ruth and Jan, and without them, nothing else would be possible. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about family. Families are complicated and they're messy and they're wonderful. And a little story about how our family became a family. Some of you may know our story, but for the rest of you, it does color uh, my approach both to my work as a therapist, but also as a mom. So my husband passed away when my children were ages 5 and 7. And Dave's wife had passed away about a month before, leaving behind 4 children. So he had 4 children, I had 2 children, and we met in a support group where we were getting support for ourselves and for our children in facing those losses. And about a year and a half later, we got married. So we're the Brady Bunch, and yes, they did play the Brady Bunch theme at our wedding. Let's see. So you get a big messy group there, kind of crazy. I was looking for some recent pictures, and I think the most recent one is this one down here with the family. All right, so now I've gone from 6 kids to an additional 2 adults, spouses, 3 grandchildren, and a fourth on the way. And one of the things that I think is important to share is that when I was a widow and I had 2 small children, I had to learn some survival techniques. I had to learn how to care for myself and keep my own head above water. And then once I was thrust into parenting 6 kids, those same skills were important. In fact, shortly after Dave and I got married, our boys, so a year later, a couple years later, they were right in, but his youngest child was in between my 2 children. So we had, say, 5, 6, 7-year-old boys, and then 7, 8, 9-year-old boys, or 10, 11, 12. And yes, that continued through teenage years, and it was very hectic. But we used to tease that we were going to put one of those things on the door of our bedroom where, like they have at a meat market where you pull the tag so that you know who's next in line. We wanted to get one of those for our kids. They all needed money for a field trip and help with their homework right when we were exhausted and ready to fall into bed. All right. So why do we need self-care? We're in a culture that compares women with each other and with some very idealistic views of women. We value the ideal thin woman. We equate youth with beauty. There are rewards for those who conform to those, thin young ideal with increased status and power and also just value. And that comparison occurs constantly. Our mothers and our mothers' mothers may have experienced, well, I'm sure they experienced some of this, but nothing compared to what we are experiencing now with the digital age and all the resources. So we need to learn ways to take care of ourselves. I'm going to focus a little bit here on food and body issues because the statistics are pretty crazy in terms of how these things pull us down, create anxiety and depression. And there are all of the notes from this talk and the resources that I used in putting this together are available on the River Ridge website. So you can go to River Ridge website and look under speaking engagements, and the notes for today's presentation are all there. So are we comfortable in our own skin? And what we in the therapist community call it is body dissatisfaction, or BD, is one of the most robust and consistent predictors of eating disorders in women. It is associated with a whole host of negative psychological outcomes, especially anxiety and depression. And because body dissatisfaction, because of it, we also find women using a lot of really unhealthy weight control measures. And that also leads to more stress. Do we get more comfortable in our own skin as we age? Well, I'm a 62-year-old woman speaking to a bunch of mothers of young children and probably middle-aged children. Uh, so here's the bad news: our bodies change, and the changes with aging shift, and we go away from that thin ideal social standard, if in fact we were ever there. As women's bodies age, fat shifts towards our torso, muscle mass decreases, skin coloration changes, elasticity of our skin changes. Um, Women age factors can also include pregnancies, reduced time for self care, demands of employment, household obligations. I didn't even put on here attending to your marriage, which is so obvious, childcare, and then even elder care. So for many of us, we end up still caring for our children and possibly helping out them with their children at the same time we're having to attend to our own parents. So the demands are huge. I also thought that I would mention here, actually, I'm going to go to the next. I'm going to go to the next slide to do that. So what do women say when they're what do women say when they're surveyed? They surveyed 1,000 women between the ages of 30 and 74. Although 73% fell in the normal weight range, 71% of them expressed desire to be thinner. Let me just say that again. 73%, almost 3/4 of them, were normal weight, and yet 71% of them wanted to be thinner. 500 women ages 60 to 70, 60% endorsed body dissatisfaction. And 56% reported restricting food as a means of weight loss, which, by the way, we know doesn't work now. It tricks your body and your metabolism slows down. Of 1,800 women 50 and older, 64% reported negative thoughts about weight on a daily basis. Now, I will say that for myself, I think I've actually become more comfortable with my body over the years. But I think, it's different for everybody. For some of us, we'll have some slings and arrows shot our way that will take a hit on our bodies will take a hit. And when I was 52, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I went through about a year of treatment. So a combination of chemotherapy, I had a mastectomy, 3 different reconstruction surgeries. And the funny thing about that was, although, going through all of that, there's considerable disfigurement, and you have to learn to deal with that. But then there was also this appreciation that, wow, that my body carried me through this, and my body can do that. And and I mentioned that, and that's not just a personal story, but I see it in my office all the time. 1 in 8 women. So if you look around your table, 1 out of 8 of you will get breast cancer in your lifetime. And that's not meant to scare you, because the fact is the chance of survival is huge if it's caught early. So it's been 10 years since I had breast cancer. But it is coming. It's out there. And I think it's just a good example of when when we go through something hard, and at the other end, even though my body's not as nice as it was before, I actually appreciate it more. All right. All right. So I thought it would be really helpful to share with you two short videos. And I think I'll do one, make some comments, and then do the second one. For those of you who are not familiar with the Dove Evolution commercial or the Dove, they did in it. So this is Dove products, shampoo, conditioner, soap, Dove. And they did a really amazing program where they took a look at what are realistic expectations and what are unrealistic expectations that our society puts on us as women in terms of beauty. So let me just start this first. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to get back to my. Here we go. Okay, so with that first commercial, I think when we do a breakout session at your tables, you can talk a little bit more about that. But the first time I saw that, I was pretty horrified to see what the normal woman looked like and then what I see on a billboard. And that's true constantly in the world that we're living in. I just learned the other day and I was going to try and get a snippet of it, but I couldn't. There's a song out right now that's really popular, and this incredibly gorgeous woman is on the cover of the album. You know, she's in all the photo shoots about the album. Well, it turned out that another woman who weighed almost 300 pounds. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Hold on. Sorry about that. This is my first remote presentation without my husband here to do the IT part. Let's see. Just hang in there for a minute. Okay.
Is this Hollis?
Yeah.
I'm just going to, you can click on play from current slide. It's the second icon over at the top, and that'll start you right where you are.
Thank you so much, Jim.
You're welcome.
All right.
And your microphone seems to be making a lot of noise, so if you can swing that out a little bit, the mic that you're using, or move it away from, yep. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, well, anyway, I'll come back to that. Let me show you another video, and this one is about how social media is hurting our girls. And I think it's so important for us to be aware of this, so we can help our girls. Not only do we need to navigate the onslaught of negative body imaging and expectations, but we also need to help our girls with this. So let's take a look at this. Okay, thank you.
Would you ever lose weight to make more money?
Sorry?
Would you lose weight to make more money?
Yes.
Yes?
My name is Ketty. I'm going to talk to some real women about body size.
Up to how many kilograms would you lose weight?
5?
5?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, you're
How
gonna have
much
to
does
help me
weight really
again.
matter?
Go ahead and minimize this screen. It's still playing a video on your YouTube.
Right.
Earn less annually.
Makes perfect sense.
And then behind this is the
It
YouTube
doesn't make
playing.
sense. It's ridiculous,
There you
but
go.
it doesn't surprise me at all.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So sorry about this. I really do appreciate that you all are letting me do this remotely. I didn't realize I was going to be out of town during today. So thanks for hanging in there with me.
And then go and click on play from current slide, and it should be back where you were.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So why are we overwhelmed? And these are rhetorical, obviously. You guys know why we're overwhelmed, but let's take a look. Busy is better. And it's we're getting judged for not only what we look like and what we produce, but just the fact that it's almost like we're proud of being busy. So our 24/7, 365-day-a-year culture is pushing us to be engaged constantly. And our children are more and more activities, bigger homes, fancier homes, new decor, newer cars, the newest fashioned clothing, even more and more time at the gym or more and better coffee dates. I mean, it's all of those things, more and more and more. And it ends up with us just being completely exhausted and worn out. And when you think about what we're up against, and I'm sure you've talked a little bit about this, Pinterest, the Pinterest world, our Facebook world, our Instagram world, right? We are constantly in a position where we are comparing ourselves with unrealistic expectations. One of my favorite things to do, and if you haven't done it before, you should take a look at Pinterest fails, and you'll see what it was that somebody was trying to do, and then what it actually looked like. So that really fancy cake, and then what that cake actually looked like when a normal person did it without practicing a bunch of times. So next, what I'd like to do is, okay, and feelings of responsibility. We're actually wired for that. So in my couples work with couples, it's always helpful for them to understand that women, our brains are wired in such a way that we can actually juggle more things than men can at a time. And so when your husband says that he walks through the living room and he doesn't see that there's dust, I wouldn't let that slide. But if you're trying to do a lot of things and he seems to get overwhelmed quickly, that is because he's not wired that way. But what happens is then we as the women end up feeling the responsibility for the whole household, for the husband, for the children, for the extended family, including the aging parents. So, all right. What I'd like to do next is have a table talk discussion. So this is going to be with the people at your table. And I'd like for the group to talk about what one thing hinders you most in each of these areas. What one thing gets in the way of you attending to your emotional health? What one thing hinders you most in terms of your spiritual growth? And what one thing hinders you most in your physical health? And I'll tell you, these are the areas, and the one I see the most easily pushed aside is physical health, which kind of ties back into what we were talking about earlier. But so, your sense of wholeness needs all of these pieces in play. So I'd like you at your group to each share about these things. And I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. And at the end, I want you to choose one person at the table who's actually going to share with the entire group. Actually, let's make it about 8 minutes. So Janessa or Rebecca, someone there is going to be a timekeeper for me. When they call time, then each table will have a spokesperson share kind of what were the main things that came up at your table. Okay, go ahead and break out into that.
Maddie and Becca are walking around looking for volunteers. Volunteer tables? Anybody?
So the big consensus at my table seemed to be time and finding the time with the overscheduling and making sure that the things we schedule kind of do double duty. Like, oh, we have to take a long drive, so I'll sit with my husband and chat. Or, oh, the kids are going to play and I'm going to go in the kitchen and turn my headphones on and block my kids out for 5 minutes. And just being aware that it's okay in this season of life.
We had fatigue is a huge part of it, with new babies specifically. Social media is an issue for us, taking up time.
I cut it.
What?
Oh, thank you.
High expectations and needing to finish our to-dos.
Okay, so social media obviously is a big one for in all aspects, emotional, spiritual, and physical, just spending the time on social media. The friend groups that you are around and associate with, just some of them, different ones being negative or maybe not necessarily saved or just in different walks of life. Self-talk and just the time management and finding the balance between them all, that in some instances you may need more of one or the other at certain points in your life.
You want one more, Hollis?
Yeah, one more.
Okay.
I want to make sure every table gets represented, please.
Oh.
For our table, we talked a lot about anxiety and control, how that presents and plays into each other, often wanting to control the mood of the family, so we stop ourselves from feeling our own feelings or expressing stuff, trying to be gentle and not actually saying what we need to say or processing our feelings, as well as with physical or spiritual, just you gotta let go to engage spiritually, and that's really hard to do when you're trying to task manage, time manage, all of those type of things. And then we also talked about the time management that everybody else has said of I'll do it later. I can get to that once the kid goes to bed, but then chaos ensues. and just that whole process of learning to let go and be more patient, but that's really hard to do when there's a lot to do.
Hey, Hollis, we have like
Yes,
17
is that your-
tables.
Pardon?
We have 17 tables. Do you want
Oh,
17? Yeah. Is that good, or do you want like one more?
So is there any table that hasn't heard what they talked about? In other words, I'm hearing some real themes.
Yeah.
Is there any table that hasn't been represented yet, or what
Oh.
they talked about has not been mentioned?
We have one.
So at our table we have
Keep the microphone
really close.
Yep.
We have a few at our table who are finding themselves in a solo parenting season. And so for us, it was really difficult trying to find the childcare to be able to cater to our emotional health and our physical health. And being able to do things like this have been really great in terms of feeding our spiritual health. And then also just trying to like find time in our schedule to spend time with the Lord has been really helpful to like balance out the emotional and the physical as well.
Thank you. You ready to move?
Okay.
We're ready to
You're
keep
ready
going.
to go. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone who participated, and I hope that, like the mom to mom in general, the whole, a lot of this is not only sharing stories and resources, but just the validation that you're not alone. That a lot of everybody else is dealing with a lot of these same issues, and so not to feel alone. So let's talk a little bit about managing stress. And I want to say that managing stress is a skill. So there's good news and bad news about that. The good news is that if it's a skill, you can learn how to do it. Feelings are not right or wrong. And I think that's something in my work with clients that we spend a lot of time on, is that, those feelings like anger, hurt, sadness, the negative feelings, if you were, they're not right or wrong. What they are is feedback. And so when you're having feelings, I want you to think about, what are these feelings trying to tell me? And a funny thing about feelings is that they're not actually always an accurate representation of the truth either. So, in other words, when we have a feeling, it might be based on exactly what just happened, or it could be triggered from something that happened earlier in the day, in another relationship, at a different time in your life. So we have to be careful about the power that we give to feelings. But the good news is we can manage feelings. We can learn to manage them. And if you happen to be married to an engineer, I say this because we joke that engineers keep us in business as therapists, especially couples therapists. They might want to talk to you about logic rather than feelings. And I would argue that logic is also not necessarily a representation of the truth. So let's go. All right. So identifying your feelings and expressing them is the way to kind of get them to calm down. And in our culture, we don't have a good feeling vocabulary. We really don't have the words to use. And so we have some resources on our website for adult feeling charts that would be helpful for you all to download and look at. But I also want to really encourage you to help the entire family up its game in terms of being able to talk about feelings. And there are a lot of very good feeling charts for children You can get them through Amazon. And if you just type in feeling charts for kids on Amazon, there's a whole plethora of them. And some of them are just faces with expressions. So you can use these with really young kids. And I am absolutely convinced that the better we get at talking about our feelings, the less business that I'm going to have. That if people learn to talk about and deal with their feelings, they're not going to end up needing counseling in the ways. I mean, a lot of our work is teaching people how to deal with their feelings. So feeling charts is a great way to help them gain the skills to be able to identify, and you identify and express those feelings. All right, feelings are physical. And when I say that, I mean that we literally feel them physiologically in our body. And one of the things that happens when we have intense feelings is we get flooded. So normally, the blood is going around in your head, and when you get excited, upset, frustrated, the blood will leave the frontal cortex of your brain and it'll go back to the amygdala, which is our fight or flight place. So we really need to learn to calm down our feelings so we can deal with them. And again, that goes back to the dealing with the physical aspects of feelings. All right, there are 3 areas, and if you don't take anything else from our talk today, this is really important. There are 3 areas where you have a lot of control over your own health. Eating, and I don't mean that you have to be a vegan, but I do encourage women to deal with your comfort eating. In other words, we all eat our emotions at some point. We eat or don't eat. So some women choose not to eat. In fact, all people use food to address emotions. So healthy eating is really critical for your self-care. Sleep. Okay, so I realize I'm talking to a room of moms. Pretty impossible for you to get 8 hours of sleep a night, but you're going to have to advocate for yourselves at home. And I think what Janessa mentioned earlier, sometimes we need to tag our husband and say, hey, it's your turn to get up, or I really have to sleep. Even putting in earplugs, if we're the one that has to get up early in the morning. Sleep deprivation will reduce your performance in every area of your life. And just like when you get on a plane, you don't want the pilot of the plane to be sleep deprived. Well, moms are kind of the pilot of their family. And again, when I was single parenting, and I hear that other people are going through that season as well, sometimes you have to just say, don't interrupt me unless there's actual blood flowing. Because the mom, when you get on the airplane and they say, a parent, put your oxygen mask on first before helping the children to put theirs on. And that goes through my head all the time, that we need to put our oxygen mask on first. And exercise. So this is, of all the things that I see with women in my office, the thing that is the first to go. And it's one of the most important things that you can do for yourself, not only to keep your body functioning well, but also for your mental health. And you don't need to have a Peloton bike. If you have one, that's probably pretty nice. But what you do need to do is talk and move daily. And we live in a culture literally where the demands on our time are a black hole. We can never, ever do all the things that are being asked of us. So finding that time for your exercise, I just tell my clients, put it on your calendar as if it's another appointment, and treat the appointments to meet with yourself, exercising or stretching, yoga, taking a walk, whatever it is you're going to be doing, treat those with the same reverence and respect that you would any other meeting. In other words, you are as important as any other meeting. And I guess I'll say, in terms of exercise, not only does it not have to be on a Peloton bike, but any kind of movement is going to be good movement. And one of the things that really helps us renew our souls and become grounded and become the best versions of ourselves in order to be there to support our family, our husband, our kids, our extended family, is taking care of ourselves and refilling that bucket. So yeah, let's see. And you've probably all seen that t-shirt, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. And there's a good reason for that. There's a lot of truth to that. You have to take care of yourself in order to be there for everyone else. All right, we're going to do another table discussion. And this time I'd like you to talk about what has worked for you. What things, in other words, in terms of self-care, and also what things do you do when you are specifically sad, angry, fatigued, or upset? And you can even, as you're talking about this, what's worked and what hasn't worked. So I'd like to have that discussion happen. And then again, we're going to have people from the tables share, and maybe some of the tables that didn't get to share last time, we'll make sure that their spokesperson speaks up this time. So let's give you guys, I didn't realize there were so many people in such big groups. So I would say 8 minutes again.
Sounds good.
And Janessa or Becca, you guys can take it from here.
Thanks, Hollis.
Okay, go ahead and wrap up your table discussions. Okay, I'm going to turn you around. Figure out how. Okay, I might just have to flip the phone. That works? Okay. Okay, so that's our room. Okay, so I have Hollis here so she can see you guys. She can't see you. She can just see the back. So, and we have her here. So, Hollis, would you be able to put up the question again on the screen?
Okay. I think it was what works for you or what doesn't work for you. Is that correct? Emily has something to share.
I was forced to share, but yeah.
I can't see it yet.
Okay, we said that time outside helps us a lot, whether you're by yourself or just putting the kids in a stroller and going for a walk. Working out, even though it can be hard, just making it happen and feeling better after, and during, hopefully, and prioritizing. Like sometimes.
Does that show?
We can't see it yet.
Okay,
Oh, maybe we don't need it. It's okay. I think they know the question.
Okay.
Am I still on? Okay. And then prioritizing. Like sometimes we don't actually need exercise. We need a nap, or sometimes we need to call a friend and not fold a load of laundry. So just knowing what we really need and not saying no to ourselves all the time.
We talked a lot about at our table actually utilizing our spouse and asking him in kindness to help out, and that oftentimes they really do want to help, but they just don't know how. And also having maybe a mom friend that can come over and you kind of tag team. If you need a nap, they watch all the kids, and or if not, then you go on a walk or you do something together that is growing both of you and meeting those needs.
Good. Any other volunteers?
Well, we joked a lot about wine, but that was totally a joke. That's not a good, healthy way. I think what we ended up finding, we ended up deciding that breathing was really important. So whether that's meditating or yoga, just making sure that we weren't breathing in our shoulders, up in our chests, so that deep belly breathing brings the stress level down, and it's easy to do.
We can't see it yet.
I phone a friend. I phone a friend. So if I need to get the kitchen clean or go on a walk or something, call someone because it's easier to move when you're talking to someone than by yourself.
It's good.
So, what we found that worked was adjusting your reality versus your expectation. I think a lot of us have these high expectations for ourselves, partners, kids, and then we go into situations and reality hits and sets in, and there's a lot of disappointment in there. So, making sure that those two kind of find a happy medium ground.
So we found, I think, general consensus was that if we make our beds in the morning, we often have a much better day and are feeling a little bit more put together. And then also scheduling time to be in the Word and making time to do our Bible studies and to do our Bible read-throughs makes a huge difference for us throughout the day.
We had a lot of things shared, but one that's going to stand out to me. We have someone at our table who recently went through an unbelievably stressful season and was placed in charge of some kids whose mom was going through a really difficult health situation. And if anyone that I know should have been crumbling to pieces, she was so strong, and she said it was asking for prayer and having people covering them. And watching her and her family go through it brought me to tears every day, and I see what prayer has done for them. So I think that we don't often delve into that and commit and trust in what the power of prayer can do for us, but seeing it walk in front of me is pretty powerful.
One more?
We talked about what you had referenced, Hollis, and naming your feelings and being able to practice enough self-awareness to identify what you're feeling at that moment so you can make a course correction if needed. You know, if we're like walking out the door and just spewing hot anger at our children, being able to stop and just say, like, you know, I'm feeling really frustrated in this moment, and just helps really make a mental shift so you can hopefully you know, kind of regain a little bit of control, self-control, not just control, and take away some of the power from those things. Another thing we talked about was movement, but also how it does get a lot easier to practice that when you have the time and space for it. So if you've got older kids who are in school, you know, you might have more time than putting it on your calendar when you have the demands of much younger children is necessary, but just a taller order maybe depending on your context.
Okay, I'm going to hang up and we'll go back to you. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Hang on, Hollis. You're muted. Oh, there
all
we
right.
go.
Thank you all for the sharing. And also a big thank you to everybody again for putting up with all these technical issues. I didn't realize in doing this today that I wasn't actually getting any visual feedback because I'm looking at the screen rather than at you. So what Maddie just did was walked around with a phone so I could actually see you and see what it looks like there. And that was really helpful. So Okay, so the other thing that I heard mentioned, and of course, I take this as a given, and I should have put it in the slides, is the importance of prayer and taking time to really slow down and to ask for help. Uh, so I often find that to be one, of course, one of the best things that we can do. So in managing feelings, I'm in a family of runners, and I am not a runner. In fact, I tell my family I'm allergic to running, which my husband, as a marathoner, thought that was a little suspicious. But the reality is that I actually do get really itchy when I run, and there's a name for it. I can't remember what it is, but nonetheless, I'm in a family of marathoners, and so the way I think about parenthood and motherhood is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so you don't want to be sprinting, you want to be running for the long haul. And I want you to be looking around while you're running, and we call that now being present. There's a lot of things in the news these days about mindfulness and being present, and that's because it works. And the way that you would do that is to stop and be aware of your senses. That's kind of the easiest way to do it. It's like, what am I hearing in this moment? What am I smelling? What am I seeing? And what am I feeling? So you're kind of just checking in with all of those things. So you want to be present. You also want to run with a team. And I guess I'll go back to when you want to be present. I know if any of you are runners there in the Hood to Coast or the Portland Marathon, you know, there's these places where you're going up over, I think it's the St. John's Bridge. And it's a really hard part of the race, I've been told. And you're going up and going up and going up. And the being present piece would be to look around and really have that attitude of gratitude, like look at where I'm at. Yes, this is hard, but just look where I'm at. Look at who's running with me. And when you look around the room where you are right now, that's your team. That is your running team. You look around, you want to support each other. If somebody needs water, you're going to give it to them. So run with a team, know who's on yours, and support each other. So I think of mom to mom as like, that is exactly what it is. So, and be grateful for the course that you're on. So I can say as a 62-year-old woman that I remember really well how completely overwhelming things were as we were raising our kids. And sometimes you just think, how am I going to get out of bed again today? It goes by so fast. You know, there are days when I just really wish I could be back there again in all the craziness. And I guess that's why my children are giving me grandchildren, so I can still experience that. But the benefit of being the grandmother is that I get to send them home when I'm tired. So let's go. All right, kind of going back to that, comparison is a recipe for depression. You don't want to be comparing yourself to someone else. And it's a natural thing for us to do, but I think the media and just the way life is, but it's certainly Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, we are set up to do that. So you also want to limit any negative news. News is these days, especially with the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world, we're assaulted by negative input. And so I tell my clients, literally limit yourself. Those clients that are really getting dragged down, I say, 5 minutes, read the headlines and be done. If you have to read the news, limit yourself to 5 minutes. Limit yourself to social media. Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. Now, I will say that Pinterest is one of my guilty pleasures, but I go to that like Pinterest fails page to remind myself that my Pinterest doesn't have to look like their Pinterest. So again, you can find that just by, I think if you just went to Googled, nailed it, Pinterest, a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them that'll come up. All right. Next, what I'd like to do is each of you should have in your packet received something that looks like this. And so what you're going to do is you're going to, and this is going to be just real quick. We're not going to overthink it. You're going to take, these are different areas of life, how we're doing in life. So say vocationally, you might, can you see that? If you were to go in and fill in, say, I'm really not happy in my work, you might only fill in to the first circle. That would be like 25%. If you're really happy in your work, you might fill it all the way out to the outside edge. Most of us are going to be somewhere in between there. And I want to make sure I say that being a stay-at-home mom, for those of you that aren't working outside the home, you have the hardest job of all. And so, do consider that your work. I think, again, it's a place where we compare and where women are hard on other women. What do you do for work? And if they don't work outside the home, there's this sense of, well, you're not really working. I know I stayed home for the first year of my marriage to Dave since we were blending families, and I didn't do my therapy work. And it was the hardest year of my adult life, at least in terms of parenting. And I just remember saying to him, I have to go back to work. I need somebody to acknowledge that I've done some good work today. I need to see adults. I need to have something that just I can actually complete, right? The laundry keeps piling up. The food needs to be prepared. So stay-at-home moms, I just need to do a call out to that as really a tough job. Anyway, so just go around the circle there on your own piece of paper and fill in, I remember when I was mothering small children, the creative artistic period section just went to like a nothing. There was hardly anything there. How are you doing in your spiritual realm? How are you doing in your marriage? How are you doing in other social relationships? So everybody take about 5 minutes, or not even 5 minutes, a few minutes to go through there and fill that in. So you're just going to draw it. It's going to look like a radar thing, and then flip it over, and on the back side I want you to write, look at like the 3 areas where you're not doing where you're doing the worst, where you're not succeeding, and I want you to put a couple of words in those of something you could do to improve that. So I remember when my boys were small, I did this, and creative artistic was like non-existent. So I wrote cello lessons in mine with a great big smile. And my husband's like, okay, so go rent a cello. And I have to say that lasted about a month because I was raising 3 small boys. But the point is, I want you to put things in there that are maybe doable for you. So if your marriage is struggling right now, then date nights would be something you could write in there. Okay, so take 5 minutes to do both sides of the piece of paper now.
All right, Hollis, are you ready for us to move on here?
I am.
You are? Okay.
Okay. So I just want to say, now you guys all have that in front of you, and I want you to take that away today and take a look at it later and think, are there any things that I filled in on this page that I could actually take some action steps to do? What is an area that I would like to see some more satisfaction for me? And what are some of those things that I could do? And then let's go to, this will be the last slide here today. And this is something I want you to think about, what we talked about earlier. You shared at your tables about emotional, physical, and spiritual health. And I want you to think about each of you, just to take a few minutes and think about what are 1 or 2 things that I could do in the next 7 days to care for myself, to kind of refill my emotional bucket. I want you to write them down, and then I want you to turn to somebody at your table and exchange what you're committing to do. So choose something, and then once you're done, turn to somebody in your group at your table, and each of you make a commitment to doing one of those things. And then I believe when you're done with that, it'll be time for Janessa to take a break, to have you all take a break. So thank you again, and I look forward to answering questions in just a bit.
All right. You have the questions, right, Hollis? You muted.
Sorry.
There we go.
Okay. You guys can see me okay?
Yeah.
Jim, can you tell me, actually, before I go to the questions so I can go off this slide, I just want to pull your attention for further resources after today. Again, feeling charts for both adults and for kids. There's a thing on there called 36 Questions to Love, and it's a really fun activity to do with your spouse. And so I'd really encourage you all to take a look at it. And then the next time you guys can have a date night, make a date night happen and do those questions. It's really a lot of fun. And then that Wheel of Functioning piece that I gave you is also on the website. And it's fun to both do it, you do it and your husband do it at the same time. And then you exchange and share with each other where is your spouse feeling fulfilled? Where are they struggling? And then you are sharing with them the same. So I'm going to leave that. And then Jim, could you tell me how to get it so that just my face is on the screen?
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep. If you can go ahead and minimize this screen, or actually, let me back up here. All you need to do is switch to turn off your sharing of the screen. So there should be that
stop
green.
Share.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. All right. Let's see.
Could you make sure to read the questions aloud, Hollis, so we can all
I
hear
sure
them?
will.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one is, can you please model a four-step process for conflict resolution about something important? Issues like childcare, financial problems, whatever. So first of all, I'll say that conflict resolution and being able to speak with our spouse, you use the exact same steps, no matter what it is that you're trying to talk about. And there's a man named John Gottman who has been doing work with couples for over 40 years, and his place is up in the Seattle area. He's got a lot of very good books out on the market, and he has worked out, and then they also have like little workbooks that are really short. And I would point to him as a resource. Basically, what he outlines is that you do a soft startup, which means you say to the other person, hey, I have something I need to talk to you about. Is now a good time? And this is really important. It's really important to stop and make sure that you're asking permission, because once they say, yes, this is a good time, then you both know to kind of pay attention. A lot of times we ask our spouse something as we're walking by, or they're in the middle of something, and you're not going to have a good conversation if it started that way. So you've got the, is now a good time. Then again, this is outlined in Gottman's little workbooks. And the next thing is that the person who's asked for the meeting will say, hey, so this is what's going on. I've been feeling this way. And you want to use I statements, not you statements. So not you did this or you did that, but I've been feeling this way, or when this happened, I felt this way. Then the person who's the listener will repeat back what they heard. And a lot of times this takes several times around for the other person to actually hear what the speaker is trying to say, because they're hearing it through their own filters. And you go back and forth like that, with both people taking turns listening and then repeating back what they heard. So that's, I mean, any of these questions you guys have sent in, we could spend, several hours on, but so I'm giving you the quick down and dirty. Okay. Mention self-care versus indulgence, and what is self-care really? So, yeah, those basic things that I talked about, care for your spiritual life, for eating and sleeping and exercising, those are self-care, and those are real self-care. So, yes, it's great to go get a pedicure. It's great to get a massage. Things like that have real added value. But how often can you realistically do them? And they don't fill our bucket. They're not as restorative as actually even going for a walk. In other words, I can have a chocolate or I can go for a walk around the block. And the research will show you that I'll have more relief from anxiety, depression, and I'll feel more renewed if I take that walk around the block rather than having that piece of chocolate. Now, I'm somebody who likes their chocolate, but I do know that there's a difference between doing something that gives you momentary relief versus something that's more long lasting. All right, let's get to the next one. This person is asking about obesity in teen girls in light of healthy self-esteem. Okay, this is way too big to try and address here today. I invite this person and anyone else who has questions about body images and obesity to email me, and I can send you some resources. All right. What do you do when you and your husband cannot agree on serious issues, such as disciplining a child, or you're on completely opposite sides and your spouse won't meet you in the middle? You call us. You suggest that you go to counseling. It's unfortunate that in our culture, we don't teach people how to find conflict resolution. And if it were up to me, we would start teaching kids that in grade school, and it would be mandatory to graduate from high school. These are such important skills, and you can learn the basics of these, in a handful of times in a marriage therapist's office. If you find a good therapist that is willing to teach you those skills, we're not talking about you having to go to therapy forever. You're talking about making an investment in your marriage where you're going to learn how to have those conversations and they'll be successful. How do you deal with a spouse who does not understand the importance of self-care and feelings? Okay, same answer as above. Counseling, and again, I'm not promoting us because we have a waiting list right now. Every single one of us since the pandemic, we're having to schedule people months out. But finding a good therapist and getting in and doing a few sessions. There's also a lot of resources. So there's a lot of very good books. I'm happy to point you towards any of them. The John Gottman ones are great. Another one that's really good, Townsend and McLeod, Boundaries in Marriage, that's from a Christian perspective, really helpful. Okay. My husband is very content and has no future goals. How do I let him lead while I struggle with discontentment? So when one person in a family is discontent, then both members of that marriage have a problem. And being able to share your concerns and frustrations with him is going to be the only way through that. And if you haven't been able to do that without support, then having someone come in and support you in that is important. This doesn't always require a therapist. It could be your pastor. It could be talking to some of the other married couples, sometimes some of the older couples or couples that have been married for a while will offer to mentor younger couples or other couples that are having problems. So I would turn to those as resources. Okay. Oh, this is the last one that is here, and I'm going to use this as a springboard to something I wanted to make sure to share with you today. The biggest struggle for me is convincing my husband that his expectations of me are too high. How would you navigate a conversation with a spouse who has a hard time seeing all that you already contribute? Okay. There's two pieces to this. One is an activity that I have couples do where I have each person individually write down, what are the things that I do to contribute to this family? What are the chores that I do? Running the kids around, keeping the cars, maintained, whatever, working in the yard, making dinners, all of it. Each of you make a list. Then, without sharing that list, I have each partner say what they think the other person does. And then you share them and compare them. And it's amazing to me how much of what we do is invisible to our spouse. And I know that when my husband passed away, all of a sudden, the house was falling apart. And there were all these things. I mean, beyond losing him, I found myself realizing, wait a minute, he's not here to take out the garbage. He's not here to do all these things that he did. So I think both directions, what we do can be invisible to our spouse. All right, now there's something I want to share with you. So I had been asked earlier if I might share some things from the Bible that would speak to self-care. And so I came up with 4 ways that Jesus practiced self-care. Number 1 was building community. He cultivated friendships. The 12 apostles, and he didn't try to tackle his ministry on his own. They looked out for each other. They encouraged and provided for one another. Number 2, he spoke on gratitude many times as a remedy to worry, and in addition to being a source of encouragement for many. Number 3, the glorification of busy is leading to burnout, mental illness, and divorce. This is what's happening in our society. You can tell your husband this, you can tell your friends this. Even Jesus rested, and he advised others to rest as well. After big events, he encouraged rest. In preparation for big events, he encouraged rest. So are you resting? The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going, that they didn't even have a chance to eat. And he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." And so they went with him away in a boat to a solitary place. Find that in Mark 6:30 through 32. Prayer was a staple of Jesus's self-care practice. If Jesus prayed, how much more do we need to do? If Jesus prayed, how much more do we need to? Look at these Bible verses on self-care through prayer, but Jesus who often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Luke 5:16. All right, anything else?
Does anybody have any questions? We can hand out mics because we have some time. We have a question.
Okay.
It's less of a question really and more of like an added to what you were saying about everybody having wait lists for counseling. If you guys are looking for good, like quality certified Christian counselors, betterhelp.com has Christian counseling available, and you guys can put in your request, and then they'll connect you with a therapist, and it's virtual, so you can get therapists from all over the country. And you can like really specify culturally what you want in your therapist. So
Great.
That's a useful resource.
And I would add to that Psychology Today has a website, and you can put as one of the filters that you want a Christian counselor. All the therapists in our office are Christian counselors, and A New Day, which works out of Western Seminary, has all Christian counselors as well. So there are resources out there, and I appreciate you bringing that one up. Other thoughts, ideas?
We may have another question.
Oh, they also wanted to share that the church has free couples mentoring available as well.
Excellent. Yeah, that is a really valuable resource, and one I would really encourage. So again, don't hesitate to go to our website. There are a lot of resources there. We do marriage intensives. We do speaking engagements. Some churches have had us come for 1 or 2 whole days doing marriage workshops. All the handouts for those are on our website, and you're welcome to download them and use them. And if you need something and you're not finding it, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, and I'll do my best to support you and help you.
I think we have a couple more questions, if
Okay.
that's okay. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. My question is how I'm going blank. My mind's going blank. Okay, so for those moms that our husbands are either in the military. Sorry.
That's okay.
For those moms that husbands are either in the military, they're maybe they're truckers and they're gone weeks at a time, or there's moms whose husbands are working full time, and they're going to school full time, and you're finding yourself as a parenting your kids alone. How do you encourage those parents? And if they don't have family that's available to help, or friends that are too busy, because almost everybody's homeschooling and they're just too busy to find time for you, or to find time to just have that self-care for yourself. How do you encourage those parents?
Good question. Yeah, we're living in a situation where the demands just far outweigh the resources, and especially if you're doing single parenting as a result of either work or remote work. One of the best things that I discovered when I was a young mom, and I've encouraged clients to do, is to find another 2 families that have children of similar age, and do some type of trade so that you're not having to pay, because also financially paying for babysitters is expensive. So say you have 3, sometimes when kids get a little older, you could have 4 families, but say you have 2 or 3 families, or even if you just have 2 and you trade off. So if it's a Friday afternoon, 1 week, mom A has the kids for both families, and then week B, mom B has the kids for both families. And so you get a break of 2 or 3 hours every other week. Or you can use the same thing as a model for getting date night with your husband, and date nights, it works really well because, the kids can go over and have pizza and watch a Disney flick together. And so if you have 3 families, then every 3rd week you watch everybody's kids, feed them pizza, show them a movie. But the other 2 Fridays you get off from doing that, and you get to have a date night. So that kind of share, again, this is going back to who's on your team and how to share resources. So that would be kind of off the top of my head, some simple things that aren't expensive to do. But again, looking around here, who are your resources? Who's on your team? And can you tag them? One of the most kind things that anybody did for me after my first husband died was they offered to come over and be with my kids for 2 hours every Monday night. That's all they did, 2 hours every Monday night. And I was free to use that time in any way I wanted. And it absolutely helped me keep my nose above water. I could go for a walk. I could go and have a cup of coffee. I could read. I could go play tennis. But that 2-hour break every week was just a lifesaver for me. So if you know somebody, if you're someone in the room that is in a better place right now than the mom that just shared in terms of having support services, then maybe, a few of you get together and say, hey, I'll watch her kids for 2 hours next week, and then somebody else could watch her kids for 2 hours the following week. And, even if you could just do that for 4 or 5 weeks, just to let her kind of get renewed a little bit, for us to give the gift of our own time to help somebody else rest and recuperate.
Thank you, Hollis.
I think that's it. Thank you, Hollis.
All right. Well, thank you all again. I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties.
I wish you could see everybody.